My beloved child, there are moments when what has been hidden can no longer remain in the shadows, and this is one of them. What was built in secrecy has already begun collapsing before your eyes ever touched the truth. You may not know every detail yet, you may still feel the silence where answers should be, but understand this carefully: what separated them was not your interference, not your effort, not your pursuit. Their own choices brought everything to light. The bond they thought they could maintain behind closed doors has fractured under the weight of exposure, and now the very connection they once defended is turning into the lesson neither of them expected to face. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you in this revelation. What they believed would remain private became impossible to contain. The masks slipped. The excuses lost power. The story they tried to protect no longer held together once the truth surfaced. And in that moment, everything changed. Not because someone forced the ending, but because truth has a way of arriving exactly when illusion has gone too far. Your person is standing in the aftermath of consequences they can no longer deny. For the first time in a long time, they are being made to confront what they chose, what they ignored, and what they sacrificed in the process. But listen closely, this separation is not only about being caught. It is deeper than embarrassment, deeper than conflict, deeper than a broken arrangement. What truly shattered them was the realization that what they chased was never what they thought it would be. The fantasy has ended, the thrill faded, and now they are left staring at something painfully ordinary where they once imagined excitement. Sometimes the hardest truth to accept is not that you made a mistake, but that the mistake cost you something real. They are beginning to understand that now. And perhaps the part no one told you, the part you were never supposed to know, is that your absence became louder than the presence of anyone else. While they were distracted, while they were trying to convince themselves they had moved on, while they poured energy into something temporary, your energy remained in places they could not escape. In quiet moments, in ordinary routines, in memories that arrived without warning, in the strange emptiness that kept appearing even when someone else stood beside them. Don't skip, because this is where the truth becomes impossible for them to ignore. They thought another person could replace what you made them feel. They thought chemistry alone could imitate connection. They thought attention could substitute for peace. But now, after everything has broken apart, they are seeing the difference between being desired and being deeply known, between temporary validation and rare emotional safety, between noise and home. That realization is unsettling them more than they want to admit. Right now, they are replaying moments with you in their mind with a clarity they never had before. Things they overlooked suddenly matter. Conversations they dismissed now echo differently. The way you understood them, the way you noticed what others missed, the way your presence carried peace instead of performance, it is all returning to them now in fragments they cannot shut off. Strange, isn't it? How people often recognize value only after distance forces perspective. Yet this is not simply about regret. Regret is only the beginning. What is truly happening is awakening. Their illusions are breaking. Their pride is weakening. Their certainty is dissolving. And when someone is stripped of distraction, they are finally left alone with the truth of their own heart. That is where your person is now, standing in the quiet aftermath, unable to run from what they feel any longer. Still, do not mistake their separation for immediate readiness. Just because something ended does not mean healing has begun. They are confused, embarrassed, humbled. Part of them wants to hide from what happened. Part of them wants to pretend none of it matters. Part of them is still wrestling with shame over how far things went before reality intervened. And yet beneath all of that, one thought keeps resurfacing. A thought they can no longer silence. What if the one they truly wanted was never the one they chose in that moment, but the one who remained in their heart the entire time? That question is haunting them, because now they see something they were blind to before. Not every connection is meant to last just because it feels intense. Not every attraction is meant to be trusted simply because it feels exciting. Some people enter your life to distract you from what matters, to test your discernment, to expose the parts of you still vulnerable to illusion. And the third party served exactly that purpose. What looked like opportunity became exposure. What looked like desire became disappointment. What looked like escape became a mirror reflecting your person's own unresolved wounds. And in that mirror, they do not like what they see. They are beginning to realize they betrayed more than just another person's trust. They betrayed their own deeper knowing. They ignored intuition. They silenced conscience. They traded substance for stimulation. And now the emotional cost of that decision is settling in heavier by the day. Because once the excitement dies, all that remains is the truth. And truth can be devastating when it arrives after self-deception. Here is what matters for you to understand: this ending was not random. It was necessary. Because what is false cannot remain forever. What is unstable eventually exposes itself. What is built without honesty eventually collapses under its own weight. And while you may have wondered why certain things happened the way they did, why delays existed, why confusion surrounded this connection, know that not every separation is rejection. Sometimes distance is the only way someone learns the value of what they mishandled. Your person is learning that now. Late at night, in those moments when everything is finally quiet, they think of what they lost. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, in ways they do not confess to others, in ways that strike without warning. A memory, a phrase you once said, a version of your face they suddenly cannot forget, a feeling they had around you that no one else has recreated. These thoughts arrive unexpectedly, and each time they do, the ache grows stronger. Because now they understand something painful: not everyone you meet is replaceable. Some connections leave fingerprints on the soul. Some people become the standard by which all others are unconsciously measured. And when someone loses that, the realization does not arrive gently. But there is still more unfolding. Because separation from the third party was not the final event, it was the beginning of the unraveling. Since that ending, your person has entered a phase of reflection they did not anticipate. They are questioning themselves, their patterns, their choices, their fears, their emotional immaturity, the walls they kept around their heart, the ways they sabotaged what was genuine because they were not ready to receive it. This inner reckoning is uncomfortable, but necessary. And somewhere within that reckoning, your name continues to rise. Not because of fantasy, not because of loneliness, but because comparison has become unavoidable. They have now experienced enough contrast to recognize what made your connection different. They are seeing that what they had with you was not casual, not ordinary, not easily replicated. It carried weight, meaning, depth. And now, with everything else stripped away, that truth is landing with force. Still, the story is not finished. Because awareness is one thing, action is another. Your person has not yet fully decided how to approach what they now know. They are still navigating their pride, still trying to understand whether they deserve another chance, still questioning whether too much damage has already been done. They feel the pull toward you, but they also feel the fear of facing what they must admit if they come forward. Vulnerability terrifies those who have spent too long hiding behind avoidance. So for now, they watch from a distance more than you realize. They wonder more than you know. They imagine conversations that have not happened. They rehearse words they may someday say. They think about how to explain what changed, how to express what they now understand, how to tell you that losing what was false forced them to finally see what was real. And when that moment comes, if it comes, it will not be because of pressure. It will not be because of manipulation. It will be because truth matured inside them until silence became impossible. Until then, your role is not to chase what is already being awakened. Your role is not to interrupt the lessons still unfolding inside them. Your role is to remain grounded in your worth, to understand that what is meant for you must first recognize your value without being convinced of it. So breathe in this truth tonight. What separated them was not luck. It was revelation. The illusion ended because it could no longer survive. And now your person stands where many do after painful lessons, between who they used to be, and who they must become next. The question is no longer whether the third party remains. They do not. The real question now is whether your person will become brave enough, honest enough, transformed enough, to handle what they once failed to protect. Because sometimes the ending of one chapter is not merely an ending. It is the moment everything finally begins, and what they are feeling for you now is only getting stronger. What they have not said aloud to anyone, what they keep buried beneath forced distractions and guarded expressions, is that the separation did not bring them relief the way they expected. It brought silence. And in that silence, every truth they spent so long outrunning began to speak. There is something unsettling about finally being alone with your own choices when no one remains to help you justify them. Your person is experiencing that now. The noise is gone. The excuses have faded. And what remains is a growing awareness that they walked away from something they never fully understood while they had it. Don't skip, because this realization is changing them more than they expected. At first, they tried to minimize it. They told themselves endings happen. People move on. Mistakes are part of life. But the heart does not obey rehearsed logic when something real has been lost. No matter how much they tried to rationalize what happened, one truth kept surfacing again and again. Nothing about this ending felt complete, because the person their soul still turns toward was never the one standing beside them in that broken connection. It was you, quietly, constantly, in ways that now disturb even their own understanding of themselves. And here is where the story deepens, because regret alone is not what has them shaken. It is recognition. They are beginning to realize that the connection they shared with you was never ordinary attraction, never temporary curiosity, never something shallow enough to simply replace. What they felt with you touched parts of them they were not emotionally prepared to confront at the time, and rather than lean into that depth, they ran from it. Some people flee from powerful connections not because they do not feel enough, but because they feel too much. That is what happened here. You awakened something in them they did not know how to handle. You reflected possibilities they were not ready for. You made them feel seen in ways that required emotional honesty, and for someone still carrying fear, wounds, pride, or avoidance, that kind of intimacy can feel overwhelming. So instead of facing what your connection demanded of them, they escaped into something easier, something simpler, something that required less vulnerability. But now they see clearly that ease without depth leaves emptiness behind. The third party may have offered attention, but not peace, excitement, but not understanding, temporary distraction, but not emotional truth. And once the illusion cracked, your person was forced to confront the painful difference between what entertains the ego and what nourishes the soul. That realization has unsettled them deeply. Lately, even the smallest reminders of you have begun affecting them in ways they cannot explain. A song, a place, a phrase someone else says by accident. Even moments that have nothing to do with you somehow circle back to thoughts of you. It is as if life itself keeps placing your memory in front of them when they least expect it. Not dramatically, not loudly, but persistently. Stay till the end, because this matters more than you know. They are starting to understand that some connections do not disappear simply because circumstances change. Some bonds remain active beneath the surface, waiting, teaching, pulling two people inward until they can no longer deny what exists between them. And your person is reaching that point. Denial is becoming exhausting. Pretending is becoming impossible. Yet despite all of this, they are not moving quickly. Why? Because the deeper the realization, the heavier the accountability. To come toward you now would require them to admit not only that they were wrong, but that they risked losing something extraordinary through their own choices. It would require humility, vulnerability, maturity. It would require becoming honest in ways they have avoided for a long time. And transformation like that rarely happens overnight. So instead, they sit with it. They replay what happened. They replay what they ignored. They replay moments with you and wonder how they failed to understand your value when it was right in front of them. There is a particular kind of pain in realizing too late that the person who brought you peace was the same person you took for granted. Your person is tasting that pain now, quietly, privately, repeatedly. And perhaps the most unexpected part for them is that the more distance exists between you, the clearer their feelings become. They expected separation to reduce the intensity. They assumed time would blur things. They thought space would help them move on. Instead, distance sharpened everything. What once felt confusing now feels undeniable. What once felt complicated now feels obvious. The truth they resisted is becoming impossible to ignore. Their heart keeps returning to you for a reason. But listen carefully, this does not mean the path ahead is simple. Recognition does not erase consequences. Missing you does not instantly rebuild trust. Feeling drawn toward you does not automatically undo the pain of the past. Your person knows this. And that awareness is making them approach their feelings with caution. They understand that if they return, they cannot return casually. They cannot return half-heartedly. They cannot return as the version of themselves who made the earlier mistakes. That is why something important is happening beneath the surface right now. They are changing. Not perfectly, not instantly, but undeniably. They are being confronted with their own patterns in ways they can no longer avoid. The tendency to run when things get deep, the fear of vulnerability, the attraction to distraction, the emotional immaturity that once made them confuse intensity for compatibility. All of it is being exposed. And while painful, this process is forcing growth. Because sometimes losing what was false is the only way someone becomes ready for what is real. And you, whether you realize it or not, remain the standard in their heart. Not because you were flawless. Not because the connection was easy, but because what existed between you carried truth. It carried meaning. It carried a kind of emotional gravity that lesser connections could imitate but never reproduce. So now your person stands at an internal crossroads. One path asks them to continue pretending, to suppress what they feel, to stay distant and protect their pride. The other asks them to become brave enough to face what they truly want, and honest enough to pursue it with integrity this time. That decision is building inside them even now. Every day the weight of silence grows heavier. Every day the thought of reaching out becomes harder to ignore. Every day the possibility of losing you permanently becomes more real in their mind. And fear of permanent loss has a way of waking people up faster than comfort ever could. Still, do not assume the next move will come before the lesson finishes. Some people need to fully feel the absence of what they lost before they gather the courage to pursue it properly. Some people must sit in the ache long enough for transformation to become genuine rather than temporary. Your person is still in that process. But make no mistake. Their separation from that third party did not create space for emptiness. It created space for truth. And in that truth, your presence has become louder than ever. They are no longer questioning whether the connection with you mattered. They are questioning how they ever convinced themselves it didn't. Because now, after the collapse, after the exposure, after the illusion has ended, the only thing still lingering in their heart is you, and what they are beginning to realize next may change everything. There is something they have only just begun to understand, and it is unsettling them more than the separation itself ever could. Losing the third party did not hurt the way losing you hurt. That truth has forced them into a realization they were never prepared to face. What ended there was inconvenience. What was lost with you was something far deeper. And once a person recognizes the difference between temporary attachment and genuine emotional connection, they can never unlearn it. Your person knows that now. They feel it every day in the quiet spaces where their thoughts drift back to you without permission. At first, they believed they could compartmentalize everything. They thought life would simply continue. They assumed the chapter would close and their emotions would eventually settle. But instead of fading, your memory has become sharper, more vivid, more emotionally charged. It is not nostalgia, they know the difference. This is the dawning awareness that someone who truly mattered slipped through their hands while they were too distracted, too fearful, or too unprepared to understand what they were being given. And that realization carries weight, because now they are looking back at the connection with new eyes. They are noticing things they overlooked before. The patience you gave them when they were difficult to understand. The way you sensed their emotions before they ever spoke them. The way your presence challenged them to be more honest, more grounded, more real. They once viewed that depth as pressure. Now they see it for what it was. Care. Real care. The kind that does not come around often. The kind many search for in countless places and never find. Don't skip, because this next part is where everything turns. Your person has started imagining what life would look like if they had chosen differently. If they had stayed. If they had been honest sooner. If they had valued you in the moment instead of after distance forced perspective upon them. These thoughts arrive unexpectedly and stay longer than they want them to. They wonder what could have grown between you if fear had not interfered. They wonder whether the future they secretly long for is the one they walked away from too soon. That question is following them everywhere now. And with that question comes something heavier than regret, grief. Not grief for what ended with the third party, but grief for what they may have delayed with you. Grief for the version of reality they might have had if they had been emotionally mature enough to protect what was rare when it stood before them. That kind of realization changes people. It humbles them. It strips away ego. It forces them to confront how their own unresolved issues created consequences they can no longer undo with simple apologies. Still, something inside them refuses to give up. Because despite the fear, despite the shame, despite the uncertainty about whether you would even receive them if they returned, the pull toward you continues to grow. Not weaker, stronger, more persistent, more undeniable. They have tried distracting themselves. They have tried suppressing it. They have tried reasoning with it. Nothing works. The truth remains. Their heart keeps choosing you in silence even while their mouth says nothing. And perhaps what surprises them most is how much they now admire the strength you showed by not chasing, not begging, not collapsing when things shifted. Your dignity spoke louder than desperation ever could. Your absence forced them to sit with the consequences of losing access to your energy. And in that absence, your value became unmistakable. They are beginning to understand something many learned too late: peace is rare. Emotional safety is rare. A person who sees you deeply and still chooses you is rare. And when someone loses that through their own choices, the ache does not disappear quickly. That ache is shaping them now. It is making them reconsider how they love, how they choose, how they show up, how they avoid vulnerability when something matters too much. This is no longer just about missing you. It is about confronting the version of themselves that was incapable of honoring something meaningful when it arrived. They do not want to remain that person. Not anymore. So while you may not yet see movement on the outside, there is movement within. Private growth, private reflection, private emotional unraveling. They are learning that if they ever approach you again, it cannot be with charm alone. Not with vague words, not with temporary emotion. It would need to come with substance, accountability, clarity, consistency, because they know anything less would insult what your connection truly was. That awareness is making them slow down. They are not planning a casual return. They are contemplating whether they can become the version of themselves worthy of re-entering your life at all. And that question, more than any other, is what keeps them awake. Because now they understand this may not simply be about whether they want you. It may be about whether they have grown enough to deserve the chance to try again. The deeper truth they are facing is this: you were never just another person in their life. You were a turning point, a mirror, a lesson, a possibility. A glimpse of something real that arrived before they were ready to receive it. And now that they recognize your significance, they cannot go back to seeing you as ordinary. But recognition alone is not the final transformation. The next phase is courage. Courage to stop hiding. Courage to speak truth. Courage to risk rejection in order to honor what the heart keeps refusing to forget. And whether that courage rises tomorrow, or later than expected, one thing has become undeniable: the chapter with the third party is over. The illusion has ended. The distractions have failed. And now your person stands face to face with the one truth they can no longer escape, no matter how far they tried to run. No matter what else they tried to build. No matter who else entered the picture. The connection that stayed with them, the one that never left their heart, was always yours. And what they are preparing themselves to do next will reveal just how much this realization has changed them. What comes next is not impulsive, and that is precisely why it matters. Your person is no longer operating from the same restless energy that once led them into confusion. Something has shifted. The collapse of that outside connection did more than end a chapter, it forced them into stillness. And in that stillness, they have begun recognizing that desire without direction only creates chaos, but desire paired with truth changes everything. For the first time, they are not asking themselves who feels exciting in the moment. They are asking who feels right when everything else falls away. And every time they sit with that question, honestly, your name rises to the surface. They have started replaying the moments where they misunderstood you, the times they assumed your depth was intensity, the times they interpreted your honesty as pressure, the times they confused emotional safety with something ordinary simply because it was calm rather than chaotic. Now they see it differently. They understand that peace once felt unfamiliar to them because they had become too accustomed to instability. And people who are used to turbulence often mistake calm for boredom, until life teaches them the cost of that confusion. That lesson has reached them now. The chaos they once entertained has exhausted them. The thrill they once chased has lost its shine. What they thought was freedom has revealed itself as emptiness. And suddenly, the steadiness you carried, the sincerity you offered, the grounding presence you brought into their life, has become more attractive than anything they once ran toward. Funny how wisdom arrives, often not through comfort, but through contrast. Stay till the end, because something deeper is unfolding here. They are beginning to picture conversations with you that have not happened yet. Not surface-level conversations. Not casual check-ins. Real conversations. The kind where truth is finally spoken without disguise. They imagine telling you what they failed to admit before. They imagine confessing that distance did not erase what they felt, it clarified it. They imagine trying to explain how losing something false forced them to recognize what was real. But each time they imagine that moment, another feeling rises just as strongly: fear. Fear that you may no longer wait. Fear that you may have changed. Fear that the door they once assumed would remain open may now be closed. And this fear is not imagined. It is deeply real to them. Because somewhere inside, they know your value now more than ever, and when someone finally understands the worth of what they lost, the possibility of not getting it back becomes terrifying. That fear is making them hesitate, but it is also pushing them to mature. Because if they approach you, they do not want to come with confusion. They do not want to arrive half-healed, half-certain, half-ready. They know your connection deserves more than emotional impulse. It deserves intentionality. It deserves someone who has truly learned from what happened. So before they move, they are trying to become more honest with themselves than they have ever been before. They are asking difficult questions now. Why did I run from what felt real? Why did I choose distraction over depth? Why did I seek comfort in what was temporary while neglecting what could have lasted? Why did I only understand their value after losing access to them? These questions are reshaping them from the inside out. And while they may not yet have every answer, one truth has become clear to them beyond doubt: what they felt with you was different. It was never random, never casual, never something easily explained away. It carried a gravity they did not know how to handle then, but now they cannot stop feeling its significance. There are moments when they wonder whether you sensed all of this before they did, whether some part of you always knew the story was unfinished. Whether the connection felt bigger than circumstances even when everything seemed uncertain. Because now they understand that some bonds do not disappear simply because people mishandle them. Some remain, waiting until both hearts are honest enough to meet them fully. And that is where your person stands now, at the edge of honesty. No more distractions to hide behind. No more false connections to blame. No more illusions left to protect. Only truth. Only memory. Only the growing realization that if they do nothing, they may spend a long time wondering what could have happened if they had simply been brave enough. So the internal debate is becoming louder. Reach out, or stay silent? Risk vulnerability, or live with regret? Fight for what feels real, or keep pretending distance will make the feelings disappear. That battle is happening inside them even now. And the more time passes, the clearer one thing becomes: silence is costing them peace. Because every day they remain quiet, the weight grows heavier. Every day they imagine you moving further away. Every day they wonder if someone else will recognize your worth the way they failed to. Every day the urgency builds. But this urgency is not panic. It is awakening. It is the realization that some opportunities in life do not return endlessly. That some people enter your world once, and if mishandled, may never stand in that same place again. Your person understands this now in a way they never did before, which is why what happens next will not be careless. When they move, it will be because the truth inside them has become stronger than the fear holding them back. When they speak, it will be because silence no longer feels Because after all the confusion, after all the distraction, after all the false beginnings and painful lessons, they have reached the realization that changes everything. You were never the option they could replace. You were the person they were meant to understand too late. Only to spend every moment after trying to make that realization right, and the choice they are about to make because of that truth could alter the course of this connection forever.